Nothing like a bit of Portman on a Thursday night. How we doing, people? Good to see you all. Right, we're going in tonight on the mysterious deaths in the Rhineland, or Westphalia. So we'll see how that goes. You know what? We'll give it a shot. I'm going to do a little preamble. Good evening, Grumpy Nation. I like that. Grumpy Nation. Before we begin tonight's investigation, let me set the scene. It's late August 2025. North Rhine-Westphalia is gearing up for local elections, and then politicians start dropping dead. Not just any politicians. 7 candidates, now 8, from the same party in just 14 days. The internet's gone mental. Conspiracy theories are spreading faster than Scottish wildfire through the heather. And everyone's asking the same question. Is this the most improbable coincidence in modern German politics? Or are we looking at something far more sinister? So tonight we'll put on our detective hats, or if you wish, put on your tinfoil one, and we'll dive deep into what we're calling the what? Murder on the Rhine. We'll explore every theory from statistical anomalies to state-sponsored assassinations, and I'll show you exactly, or I'll talk you through, how a proper police investigation, circa my time, would handle this. Because if there's one thing 20 years in the force taught me, it's that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, good evening. Nice to see the chat room buzzing away already. Shalini, Julie C, Dreadeye, Robin. Hi, Robin. Who else we got? It was Robin that kept posting this nonsense in the, what's it called? Twitter feed. So I thought I'll give it a look. Vaughn, David Nolan, Paul Armstrong. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. Who'd I miss? Did I miss you, Beats? No? I got you. There we go. There we go. The AfD was unalived by Jewish space lasers, says Vaughn. There we go. There's a first wacky conspiracy straight away. Right, here we go. As you know, and if you don't, you will find out. I am Sgt Grumpy, and I can be very grumpy indeed. And this is a channel where we do tend to investigate the weird, the unexplained, the downright suspicious, but with the cold, hard light of evidence. In tonight's case, between August 19th and September the 2nd, 7 candidates from Germany's far right, AfD, Deutschland Party, died within a 14-day window. It's now 8. Possibly 9. And the complete total of dead politicians from other parties as well is now round about 16. So, I mean, I shouldn't be laughing, but it's cracking on a bit, isn't it? So, what have we got? We've got the AF. Oh, let's get to the slides. I don't have a lot of slides because, to be honest, they're a pain in the butt. But there we go. We've got a nice picture of Germany there. Germany, Rhine-Westphalia. Germany's lovely. You ever been to Germany? Lovely country. I do like it. And the Germans, surprisingly nice people. But they're not annexing Poland. But yeah, they're great. They really are good people, especially in their own country. When they're not annexing your sun lounger with a towel. Robin speaks fluent German. Excellent, Robin. So you can, you should have been on the show and you could have done all the pronunciations, because, of course, I will murder them, as is my want, as they say. Right, where are we now? So here we go. Yeah, and I'll start murdering them straight away. So no, that was a joke, YouTube. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. German authorities say there's no evidence of foul play. The victims, Wolfgang Klinger, 71. Wolfgang Seitz, 59. Ralph Klaus, Norbert Lang, 66. Stefan Barendez, 59. Hans Joachim Kind, 80. Rene Herford, cause unknown, and age. Patrick Seitz, who took his own life. And there are more. I tell you what was difficult, though, getting pictures of them, because apparently the Germans don't like to post pictures of dead people. So the web appears to be being, what would you say, wiped clean of their previous presence. Now, you might think that's suspicious, but apparently this is a thing in Germany. So these are the guys as they popped off, all the way from August 21st through to September the 2nd. And there's more. There's an extra one, I think, on that party. And we had two at the time. When I started the research this morning, we had 2 or 3 from other parties, one from the Greens and one from the left. And now it's up to something like 16. So that sounds impressive. So let's start with that. The statistics. So we start with the big flashing neon sign that's got everyone's attention. The maths. 7 deaths, 8 deaths, 1 party, 14 days. It's kind of coincidence that makes even sceptical old cops raise an eyebrow. The whole thing exploded when Stefan Homburg, a retired economics professor, declared his cluster almost statistically impossible. Those are big words indeed, and we'll dig into them. AfD co-leader Alice Weidel retweeted it, and then, of course, our friend Elon, who's been cheerleading the AfD, and let's be honest, he has, jumped in with his seal of approval by giving it an exclamation mark. Now, it might sound little, but that's a big thing, because once Elon's commented on your tweet, it's heading for Mars, unlike his rockets, which are still exploding in low Earth orbit. But anyway, not to worry about that. I'm sure he'll get there. And this is where we need to separate the maths from the hysteria. Well, let's show how a real statistical analysis should work. I've got a drink tonight, so I was hoping I would make less faux pas or foxy's paws with my words. So first you got the base rate fallacy. So the North Rhine-Westphalia region had over 20,000 candidates running across 427 municipalities. Germany is a big country. And when your sample size is that massive, statistically rare events become, well, statistically not rare. Almost inevitable. It's like the birthday paradox, and you've heard that one. You know, in a room of just 23 people, there's a 50% chance that 2 of you share a birthday. You've heard the Kevin Bacon hypothesis, the 8 degrees of separation. It only takes 8 jumps, and you know someone who knows Kevin Bacon. But let's have a look. And secondly, it wasn't just the AfD candidates. We've already mentioned that. Klaus Reger from the Greens, Lenore Janssen from the Social Democrats. We're looking at least 10 candidate deaths. Now, I believe the figure that's being bandied about now by the papers, have you called the Daily Mail the paper? But I think the figure being bandied about is 16. That's a lot of people in a particular group. But there's a lot of people represented there. There's 20,000 people. And if you think about it, remember, 1,600 people die every day in the UK. Every day. So just remember that. So, let's play devil's advocate. What if the mathematics really are trying to tell us something? What would you look for? Well, in epidemiology, and we've all become experts in that, have we not? Disease outbreak investigation. We look for clustering patterns. And in the same geographical area, same time frame, same demographic, same exposure source. And the AfD deaths tick some of these boxes. You know, same party, overlapping time frame, similar age, but they're spread across different cities, different causes of death, different circumstances. And this is where the internet gets creative. Oh, doesn't it just? Some are suggesting this was planned using actuarial tables, targeting the candidates most likely to die naturally to provide perfect cover. Older candidates, those with known health issues, creating a natural cluster that wouldn't trigger immediate suspicion. Now that would be smart. It would be diabolically clever, if true. Pick your targets based on life expectancy, medical records, stress levels. Then either wait for nature to take its course or give it a gentle helping hand with methods that mimic natural death. But there's a problem, isn't there? Accessing detailed medical records for this kind of planning would require insider knowledge from multiple healthcare systems, insurance companies, government databases. There's a whole conspiracy involving dozens of people across multiple institutions. And as anyone will tell you, the more people involved in a conspiracy, the less likely it is to say secret. Unless your security services are running it. Security services. Got a bit of Sean Connery there. But we've had no reports of data breaches, no whistleblowers have come forward, no unusual access to medical records, no break-ins, nothing that would tie anything to gathering information in preparation for this diabolical plan to take out the AfD. So the actuarial assassination theory, which sounds brilliant, while mathematically elegant and devious, it really does lack supporting evidence. Right. All right, people? All right so far? Are you with me? If you want to chat in the vertical chat, wire in. You just need to be a subscriber. The main chat is in the horizontal stream. Again, just jump in there and wire in, because all you need to do is subscribe and you can chat straight away. Those that want to make a small donation to my meagre coffers, feel free. I know it's the beginning of the month, so I thought you'd be better off this week than last, because we haven't had a drop for a little while. I'm waiting to find out if Ed's going to be with us tomorrow. He's at the doctor's again tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. I have been in contact with him. So he might be on tomorrow, he might not. So there are other people as well that may be on tomorrow or might not. I've been making suggestions. You know, even if Ed is on, it might be good to take some pressure off him as well, because I think I can be a lot to take. Maybe I can't. Right. So let's get into the meat and potatoes, how you'd actually investigate something like this, because if we're dealing with foul play, there should be evidence. Yeah, there should be evidence. And let me walk you through what a death investigation looks like. You know, you get called to a report of someone having died, whether it be in their bed or in, you know, premises or in their work or whatever. So we go into, yes, thank you, Shalini Varma. Excellent.
How dare you?
It's been that long since I used the siren, I forgot which button it was, but there you go. Use, ma'am, or a star. I wonder if that comes up. Does it? Shalini is liking the daily investigations. Well, that's good, because we'll keep going if we keep getting them numbers and people are liking it. Why wouldn't we? So, you've been called to a suspicious death, or you've been called to a death even if it's not suspicious. You're going to go in with, how did this person die? You don't just go, oh, dead person, call the coroner, It's not quite like that. Well, it's certainly not like that here in Scotland. I don't know quite what it's like in England, and I'm not sure 100% what it's like in Germany, although the Germans do tend to be quite rule-based, so I'd imagine they've got the routine of pat. So what you do is you go in, you secure the scene. You don't want people to be moving things around. You don't want them to be moving the body, and you don't want anybody in their ante coming in and out without good reason. So you're looking at the general scene and you're looking for things like sign of struggle, forced entry, anything out of place, medication nearby, anything spilled, any food or something that's been inadvertently swallowed. Have they fallen? Have they hit their head? We're looking at all these things. And in Wolfgang Klingel's case, our first death on August the 19th, local authorities found him at home, and his death was attributed to chronic disease. But what would we also look for, regardless of whether it was attributed to that or not? Position of the body, signs of disturbance, prescription medications present, any food or drink, electronic devices, signs of visitors. Photograph everything before you get touched. And then you examine the body itself. You look for external signs of trauma, injection sites, unusual marks, defensive wounds. Check fingernails in case they've got any scrapings or DNA under them. Look for petechial hemorrhaging, when the eyes go bloodshot. That might suggest strangulation. Marks around the neck, ligatures. Check for lividity, because if a body's been lying for overnight, the blood will have pooled. If the body's been moved, that blood will no longer move with the body because it's pooled and solidified. It's maybe not pretty, but that's what happens. And then let's go with wild conspiracy theory number 2, the perfect poison ring. And this is where the internet's imagination really runs wild. There are theories floating around about exotic, undetectable poisons. Ricin, polonium, modified insulin, even theoretical bioweapons that mimic heart attacks or strokes. And let's have a look then at toxicology. Modern forensic labs can detect an incredible range of substances, even in minute quantities. We're talking parts per billion. The idea of a truly undetectable poison is generally a Hollywood fiction. Certain substances, however, do break down quickly. Stachynoline or stachyline or choline or whatever, for instance, metabolizes rapidly and can be missed if you're not looking for it specifically. Insulin overdoses can be tricky to detect post-mortem. Some plant-based toxins, like aconitine, can mimic heart attacks. And that's why you're looking for things like injection sites and stuff like that when you're doing your body examination. However, to prove poisoning, you're going to need proper sample collection at autopsy, and within hours of death, preferably. You're going to need correct storage and comprehensive screening. You're going to have a full chain of evidence. In cases attributed to natural causes, especially with elderly victims with known health issues, this level of examination and autopsy sometimes isn't standard unless there's a specific reason for suspicion. So if you've been to the scene and not found anything terribly suspicious, then it's maybe just going to go down as a age-related death, illness-related death. Doctor signs the death certificate and off you go. And next thing, the undertaker comes along, takes the body for either embalming and burial or cremation. It's Germany, cremation. Oh dear. Anyway, so Where was the victim over the last 24 to 48 hours? Who did they see? What did they eat or drink? You're going to reconstruct through talking to their friends, family, the mobile phone records, whatever. You can reconstruct their final days and even go down to minute by minute. You interview the family, friends, colleagues, restaurant staff, delivery drivers, workmates, etc. People, everybody that's been in contact with them. And then you'll go into your digital investigation. Let's put some slides up to give you something better to look at than my face, should we? So you go into the digital forensics workflow as well. Phone records, email communications, social media activity, GPS tracking data from vehicles, sat-nav routes and whatever. You're looking for threats, unusual contacts, deviations from a normal pattern, changes in behaviour or routine. In a politically motivated case, you'd specifically examine threatening messages or emails, unusual political meetings or contacts, unusual requests for meetings or contacts, changes in security protocols, financial irregularities, has he been paid off, and travel patterns. And then after that, you're maybe just not going to accept chronic disease as the cause of death if you've got anything to, that just niggles away at you. If there's something like, an unopened prescription bottle that should be half used, that kind of thing, what's going on here. So you're going to look at it and ask for what specific conditions did they have? What medication should they be on? Have they had any recent hospital visits? Have they had any changes in treatment? Who were their doctors? Have they had any inoculations recently? Because that's something that we can't really touch on here, but when you've got people dying suddenly, there's something else that may be a factor. And I do know the Germans had a particularly high uptake. There were Germans being rule followers, very high uptake. Now we're into conspiracy theory number 3, the medical records manipulation. Some online theorists have suggested that medical records were altered to support natural death verdicts. In this scenario, genuine health issues were either exaggerated post-mortem or medications were switched to ones that would cause complications. Now, that would require access to the healthcare systems and cooperation from medical professionals. While theoretically possible, it would leave extensive digital footprints in modern electronic health record systems. It's a hard one. That's a hard one to even countenance in the absence of any kind of proper evidence. Hey, CoffeeBot's on the vertical chat. Thank you, CoffeeBot. It's putting out things like support on Ko-fi. Good on you, CoffeeBot. That's cool. Why aren't you doing it on the main chat? Oh, because we got a new donation from Robin. Excellent. Cool. Thank you very much, Robin. You are a star, sir. Yeah, so there we go. Right, next. Where were we? Even in cases of apparent natural... Well, sorry. Let's go back a bit. I missed a wee bit. If you were the detective on this case, and looking at you know who you are, what would be your first priority? Timeline reconstruction, toxicology, or digital forensics? Where would you go first? Even in cases of apparent natural death, a thorough autopsy can reveal a lot. You're examining organ weights, looking for unusual pathology, taking tissue samples, checking for foreign substances. It's quite a thorough procedure. I don't know if any of you have ever seen one. But it is a very thorough procedure, I can assure you. I've been at quite a few. For evidential purposes, I didn't do them. I watched a doctor do them, but because of the situations, there had to be police witnesses there. Now, the problem is that autopsies in general aren't automatically performed for elderly individuals with known health conditions, unless there's a specific suspicion. And this is where the conspiracy theories actually gain traction, because without comprehensive postmortems, you can't definitively rule out foul play. And what we know, though, is that the German authorities have stated no evidence of foul play was found. And we don't know the extent of the investigations conducted, whether autopsies were performed or not, or if toxicological screening was done at all. And that information gap does fuel speculation, and it does appear that the Germans are very, they hold their cards very close to their chest. And they don't release an awful lot of information. They claim like GDPR, which is still a thing even in this country. Although the EU one doesn't apply to us anymore, we did adopt our own version. Now, if there's any kind of coordinated attack behind this, you've got to think about Cui Bono, who benefits. So let's dive into the who benefits question. You follow the money, the power, and the ideology. AfD is not exactly a happy family. They're not a coordinated and cool bunch. And German politics has gotten increasingly violent in recent years. The party split between the hardcore legal extremists and the more moderate pragmatists who just want electoral success. So think of it as a difference between ideological purists and political opportunists. Robin says, yes, there's been efforts and discussions in Germany in 2025 to make the AfD illegal. Yeah, there has been. But even within the AfD, there's a lot of infighting between themselves. So, wild conspiracy number 4, the internal purge. Hardline AfD factions decided to eliminate moderate candidates who might water down the party's extremist message. By targeting local candidates who weren't fully committed to the radical agenda, they could ensure only true believers get elected. It's an interesting one. How would you investigate it? Monitor internal party communications if they'd allow you to. Review them. Financial flows between the different factions. Financial flows in and out of the party and to whom. Meeting records and attendance. Voting patterns on key issues. Personal relationships and rivalries. And this is a massive undertaking. This is a security service level undertaking now. Maybe even with the possibility of putting people in undercover as helpers. But because the AfD was designated as a far-right organisation, as Robin pointed out earlier, security service has more power to do these things with them than it does on others. But if you're going to hit 7 people simultaneously, 8 now, and 16 in total when you take in all the other parties, you're suddenly thinking, hold on a minute, this is going to put red flags up higher than Elon Musk can manage with a starship. So when we look at what actually happened with Walter Lubbock, something, he was assassinated. So 2019, the assassination of Walter, CDU politician, shot on his terrace by a neo-Nazi known as Stepan Ernst with Combat 18 connections. And this was a targeted political violence with clear ideological motives. So the difference, Walter was a single target with a clear motive. His pro-refugee stance. He'd received death threats for years after defending refugee policies. It was a sniper's bullet, professionally executed with clear political messaging. And if you think back, when people do these political assassinations, they normally leave a calling card because they want to send a clear message. Because not only do they want to take away what may be perceived as a threat, they want to tell everyone else that you're next if you don't toe the line. This is exactly, is it not, what happened with Ms. Connolly? You know, you're next. Graham Linehan today, you tomorrow. Yeah? Same technique. Wild conspiracy theory number 5. The rival party operation. So here's the one that's gaining traction online. Competing parties orchestrated the death to damage the AfD's electoral chances. By creating a suspicious cluster, they could generate negative publicity and conspiracy theories would scare off moderate voters. That would be very, very risky, would it not? Because you need access to detailed information about these AfD candidates. You'd need to coordinate this across multiple cities. You'd need operatives that were capable of causing deaths that appear natural, and that's not something that's going to be, you know, you're going to pluck that off the shelf. That's security service stuff, isn't it? Because I wouldn't know where to start. Well, you know, I wouldn't. I mean, give me a gun, yeah, but I wouldn't know where to start about poisoning someone. I wouldn't want to know how. I dare say you could find out if you wanted to, but, you know, that's a tricky one. And you need absolute certainty that the plan wouldn't backfire, because if it backfires and somebody blows the whistle on you, your party comes under the firing line. And boom, politics in Germany just explodes. So, recruiting informants within political parties, monitoring meetings, tracking financial flows. The BFV, the German Domestic Intelligence, they probably already have extensive surveillance on the AfD following that extremist classification that I said out earlier. They will no doubt have informants who are letting them know what's going on. And because of that classification, the BFV has access to phone taps, email monitoring, encrypted message interception. They can track most digital communications, even some encrypted ones, and they're doing it with proper legal authority. Whether it's ethical or not, that's a different question. And that's not something I'm going to explore tonight. And then there's financial intelligence. We're going to follow money trails, unusual payments, foreign funding sources. Political assassinations often leave financial footprints because people don't work for nothing, except for me. And I'm not tonight because Lindy and Robin have both dropped me something. So thank you, guys. Thank you. Foreign intelligence operations. Now, this might have some plausibility, could it not? The AfD has documented foreign intelligence connections. Both Russia and China have history of eliminating inconvenient assets. Well, don't they just? Don't want to be in a hospital in Russia if you're not in favour, especially near an open window. the timing just before elections maximizes chaos and distrust as well, because this is throwing a big spanner in the works of the elections as well. But if it was the Russians or the Chinese, would you not expect more sophisticated methods, especially from the Russians? I mean, Georgy Markov, anyone? Yeah? The two guys down in Porton Down, I don't think that was the Russians. I think that was our security services that took that one on, using the Russian, using a downbred version of the Russian incapacitating agent. Right, so you would expect more sophisticated methods, and foreign intelligence services usually avoid operations that draw this much attention. But when they do it, they normally leave a message on the way they do it, don't they? So they would. I can't see this. I can't see this being Russia or China. I can't see. And someone suggested it was Ukraine because they were taking out people that were against Ukraine. These are local elections. Local. This is like taking out the councillor for the county council. He's not going to be voting on Ukraine. So why would Ukraine want to be doing this? Unless they've been taking too much of the marching powder, perhaps. So what we know, as far as we're being told, no reports of intercepted communications suggesting internal plots, no credible intelligence leaks, no whistleblowers. Nothing's come out in the media. The BFV has extensive surveillance capabilities on the AfD, but it hasn't indicated any evidence of internal violence. So we're not getting a lot. So if this has been done by any one person, party, or a coordinated effort, it's been very well controlled. So could it be state-sponsored elimination? Let's venture into the darkest corner of the conspiracy rabbit hole. The possibility that this was a state-sponsored operation. Either German intelligence agencies deciding to thin the herd of extremist candidates, or foreign powers eliminating compromised assets. Now, I never thought of that one, did you? Maybe the people that were taken were in thrall to a foreign power. So in May 2025, the BFE officially classified the entire AfD as an extremist organisation. This gives them enhanced surveillance powers, wiretaps, informants, financial monitoring. Some online theorists suggest they went beyond surveillance to elimination. The logic goes with the AfD polling at record highs, 26% nationally. The establishment panicked. And rather than risk a far-right electoral breakthrough, they decided on direct action. That's a big call. And I know we talk about things in Britain and a secret cabal running the country and external influence, and there's no doubt there is degrees of that. But it's a big call to ask your security service to take out members of an opposing party. Unless, of course, your name happens to be Zelensky. But anyway, so how would we investigate that one, right? So state-sponsored operations leave different footprints than criminal acts. You'd look for professional execution with minimal evidence, okay? Coordination across multiple jurisdictions, okay? Access to classified information about targets. Got that? Yep. Unusual government personnel movement. I'm not sure. I don't know. I need to look into that. And budget irregularities in intelligence agencies. It's not something we're going to get information about, is it? So operations involving multiple targets require multiple operatives. Someone always had an attack of conscience. And this, remember, it happened in GCHQ when we were doing the weapons of mass destruction, and that lass blew the whistle on them, and quite rightly so. You'd be looking for unusual resignations from intelligence services or their operatives, requests for protective custody, anonymous tips to journalists or opposition parties, and behavioural changes in intelligence personnel. Because when these things go down, people do get nervous. They get nervous and they start behaving differently. And you even see this in the police when you're doing certain operations. So this conspiracy theory number 7, the deep state cleanup, that would suggest a coordinated effort between German intelligence, EU security services, and possibly NATO intelligence to prevent AfD electoral success. Timing just before crucial local elections would maximise political impact while maintaining plausible deniability. Foreign elimination theory. Alternatively, Russia or China eliminated the AfD candidates who'd become liabilities. That's what we talked about briefly earlier. Maybe these candidates knew too much about foreign influence operations, or they were preparing to defect, go public, or blow the whistle. The foreign intelligence services have the resources and the expertise for sophisticated operations, much as we have, both internally and externally. They do have access to exotic poisons, Novichok, polonium, etc. They have professional work teams, don't they? They have an international logistics network, and they experience making terminations look like accidents. So that would be quite interesting. These things never go away once they're established. You're right, espresso mechanic. Once a government's got something that's effective and works, it doesn't tend to let it go, does it? So we need to look at the patterns here, the geographic distribution of the deaths, the timing relative to intelligence ops, the victim selection methodology, the operational security measures employed. Would there be any signals intelligence, like unusual electromagnetic signatures around the death locations, surveillance camera analysis for recurring faces and vehicles, communication partner analysis before deaths, travel document irregularities? This is all stuff that security services would be privy to, that the police wouldn't have a Scooby about. We just wouldn't have any access to this. It would be beyond it. So, what's your suspicions in the chat? What do you think? Are we looking at incompetent spies or incredibly competent ones? Or is it just something else? Well, do you mean from onset to actual death, or do you mean the time between each person that died, Robin? Because we do kind of have that. I mean, there's the deaths there. Look at them. So the first one was August the 19th, then the 21st, then the 27th, then the 28th, and then 2 on the 30th, and 1 on September the 2nd, and then another one yesterday, I think. So that's the AfD ones. Yeah, one of the AfD ones was a self-termination. So unless it was a Hillary Clinton version of 2 to the back of the head, we're probably going to have to take that one as a self-termination. So let's move on. Wild conspiracy theory number 8, the perfect storm operation. And this is possibly the most elaborate theory that's circulating. Multiple actors coordinating without direct cooperation. So foreign intelligence eliminates their compromised assets. German intelligence targets the most dangerous extremists. and internal AfD factions are removing rivals. All happening simultaneously, creating this perfect statistical cluster. 16 people dead. It's wild, but each group is operating independently, thinks they're running a small targeted operation. They're unaware that others are doing exactly the same thing but targeting different people. It's coincidence, but it's kind of orchestrated coincidence because they're all aiming for the same targets, you know, the run up to the elections. I would explain the statistical improbability while avoiding the communication risks of a single large conspiracy. It would require, you know, it would require a certain amount of good timing between the different groups without knowing each other and them making very similar simultaneous operational decisions. How could we prove some kind of state-sponsored involvement here? Well, we'd be looking for classified documents or leaks. We'd be looking for technical evidence of sophisticated methods. We'd be looking for witness testimony from intelligence personnel. And we'd be looking for financial trails to government agencies. Communication intercepts showing operational planning would be good. These are things we are not going to get for months or years if it ever turns out there was some kind of state-sponsored involvement, whether it be internal or external states. So at this moment in time, we have no credible evidence of state or foreign involvement that's emerged from official investigations. Or we have no intelligence leaks, and we don't have anything been sent to the papers unless they've been shut down under D notices or German equivalent. So, what is the real threat? Where did it come from? So let's step back from the conspiracy theories and look at the real documented threat, the dramatic rise in political violence in Germany. So the numbers are stark. 5,400 crimes against public officials in the last year alone. Attacks on local politicians have tripled in the last 5 years. Social Democratic candidate Matthias Ick hospitalised after an attack in Dresden. Former Berlin Mayor Franziska Giffey assaulted. It's not theoretical, that's happening, that's fact. The question is whether the AfD deaths fit that pattern or represent something different. So typically though, political violence in Germany targets politicians that are supporting refugee and immigration policies, not something the AfD is known for. They target local officials dealing with asylum centres. These people are standing for election. I don't think they were already elected. Again, dealing with asylum centres, not something the AfD is known for. And they normally target politicians from the ruling mainstream parties. Again, not the AfD. So the AfD deaths would represent a departure from this pattern, targeting politicians who oppose immigration rather than support it. So then we have suggestion that the deaths were orchestrated by the AfD themselves as a kind of internal false flag to generate sympathy votes and validate their claims of being persecuted by the establishment. That'd require the candidate to sacrifice some of their own candidates, yeah? But historically, extremist groups have used martyrdom as a political tool. The timing just before elections would maximise electoral impact. It certainly would. You'd be looking for financial flows within the AfD leadership, insurance policies on deceased candidates, either being taken out or increased, communication patterns before death, and the backup candidates would need to be well prepared and ready to go. Hi, Darren. He's on the vertical chat. NGOs. Yeah, it's a possibility, mate. It's a possibility. No evidence of AfD involvement in orchestrating the deaths of their own candidates. We just don't have any at this point in time. We don't have a lot of evidence at all, to be fair. And while we're chasing conspiracy theories about these 8 deaths, 9 deaths, 16 deaths, real political violence does continue. So, what caused the deaths of these people? So what's the wildest explanation you guys can come up with that I've not covered? Yeah? You got something? Are the elections being delayed? Well, no, they're not. What's happening is, well, some of them have had to have the papers reprinted and the substitute candidates put in. So it has caused a bit of a mess, and people are running about trying to get everything back. And when you look at the ages, I mean, let's go through the ages of these people. So Ralph was 66, Wolfgang was 71, Stefan was 59, Wolfgang Seitz was 59. Rennie Hartford died of kidney failure due to pre-existing condition. Patrick, the reserve candidate, self-terminated, and Hans Joachim Kind, he was 80, and he's down as died of natural causes. So most of them have either been ill, had chronic conditions. There's a couple there in their late 50s who were apparently, to all intents and purposes, healthy and succumbed to heart attacks. It's a possibility, especially on the stress leading up to an election. I mean, look at Graham Linehan with a blood pressure of over 200, putting him in hospital from his detention in Heathrow Airport. So it's a possibility, but ultimately, you go back to the statistical count. It isn't that unusual with this amount of people that were standing as candidates. Remember, 20,000 candidates standing, most of them elderly, and in various states of health, and 16 of them have died over the last 2 weeks. Especially with the stress leading up to the elections. It's possible. It's possible. Remember, 1,600 people die every day in the UK. Germany's a bigger country. I don't know how many die there. But yeah, so it's possible, and people have got to die sometime. 71, 80, 66. It's difficult to discount natural causes, especially when you aren't getting any evidence and you're not getting any leaks. And normally it's leaks that let us know what is actually happening. And people on Twitter coming up with wild ideas isn't a leak. It's great entertainment, but it's not a leak. And it's like the guy who came up with the idea that it's Ukrainians taking out, the far right that would not support sending them weapons. It's local elections. These guys aren't going to have the ability to influence what happens at a national level. Right, where are we? So the investigation that should have happened. So if we want to take a proper investigation into this cluster, because the information gaps are obviously what's fueling the conspiracy theories, we need to look at a multi-agency task force, including the local police, state investigators, federal agencies, and public health officials. You need to have autopsied every one of them. Full post-mortem examinations for all deaths, regardless of apparent cause. Now, the problem is you might not be able to get that now because some of them may have been, if they've been buried, you could still do it, but some of them may have been cremated. Screening for an extensive range of substances, including exotic and biological agents. So you need full toxicology reports. You need to do a complete digital forensics, analysis of all their electronic communications and location data. And you need to do a deep dive into each victim's recent activities, their contacts, and their potential threats. So the problem is most crucial evidence degrades rapidly. Toxicology evidence, digital communications, witness memories. You've got a narrow window to get this for comprehensive collection. And a lot of it's gone. I mean, look at this. These guys died less than 2 weeks ago and pictures have been removed from the internet. And before anyone says, well, there's a fucking red flag, that I think it's a kind of German thing. They don't like putting up pictures of dead people. And a lot of them cite privacy and, you know, the family don't want to be involved in whatever. Fair enough. So what we don't know, were autopsies performed on all 7 victims? I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I really don't think so. What level of toxicology screening was conducted? Probably very little. Have their electronic devices been examined? Maybe they've been picked up now. Maybe. Now that we've had, you know, quite a few. Whether the crime seems properly secured and examined, I doubt that very much. I think these were probably just treated as sudden deaths. If anyone's had the police come into a sudden death, if the family's there and there's no real apparent, you know, cause for concern, you're not really going to do that much. You're going to take things at face value. And maybe you shouldn't, but, you know, you got to bear in mind that 99.9% of the time when someone has a sudden death, their family is suffering greatly. And, you know, you're intruding in their grief. So usually you try and help them out rather than try and make things worse. It gets particularly harrowing when it's children and stuff like that as well. But even old people, you know, when they're found, and I mean, I've told you stories about finding the guy in the bucket in the kitchen and stuff like that. It's not suspicious though, you know, and you tend to, yeah, okay, you report it. A report goes to the fiscal, but it's not a comprehensive report. And in a lot of cases, if the doctor is a family physician and he signed the death certificate, they don't go for post-mortem either. So the problem is, though, with something like this, and the thing is, it's kind of retrospective as well, because at one point it was only 2, and then it was 3, and then it was 4, you know, and suddenly you've got a cluster of 8 or 9. And then you've got 16 people, counting in all the other parties. And it suddenly starts to think, oh, that's a lot of politicians. But in the grand scheme of things, is it? Is it really? Especially when you consider what's been occurring over the last 5 years and Germans being rule followers and politicians in particular would be, you know, they wouldn't get in anywhere if they didn't have it. So, but when you've got a cluster like this and you've not done the groundwork at the start, the problem is you've got this information vacuum. And that's what lets conspiracy theories flourish. Because if the authority can't turn around and say definitively this is the case, then people are obviously going to make up their own mind and they're going to come up with their own theories. And you can't say that's not right because the authorities can't say there's no evidence of foul play. You know? Or when they say there's no evidence of foul play and you say, well, what have you looked for? And they can't tell you. So obviously that vacuum Hume allows people's minds to just go off and come up with all sorts of ideas. Wait, yeah, like the Nicola Bully case. And there's people saying somebody came back and planted it back in the water, and it's like, people lost in rivers is a nightmare. And they can, and people that die in quarries and lakes, they can pop up like 2 years later. And you're like, where did that come from, So, time for my verdict. So we've explored, we've done it together, we've gone through it, and I think we've done it comprehensively. I'd like to think so. We've explored every real conspiracy theory out there. And we've gone from mathematical impossibility to international assassination plots. We've looked at statistical anomalies, internal power struggles, state-sponsored elimination, foreign interference, and false flag operations within the actual party itself. So we've got our matrix, we've got 8 candidates dead within 14 to 15 days. Ages ranged from 59 to 80. Most of them had known health issues. A couple were identified as healthy. When you see, I think I got one picture of a guy. I think this is one of the 59-year-olds, right? So let's pop him up. He's not on the skinny side, Is he? It's interesting, but I think, and they're all under stress. The deaths have already been attributed to natural causes, or in one case, a self-termination. We don't have any forensic evidence of foul play, or we don't have any that's been disclosed. The candidates from other parties have died as well, and in this case, we've now got to the point more candidates from other parties have died, or at least as many. And the German authorities have found no evidence of coordination. What we don't know, the extent of forensic examination conducted. We don't know the toxicological screening results or how much was done. We don't know the digital forensics findings or how much, if any, was done. We don't know how detailed the crime scene analysis was. And we don't know how many agencies they've coordinated with, both internally and externally. So as a bottom line, this is what I see, a tragic cluster of deaths that coincided with one of the most contentious political periods in recent German history. The statistical improbability is real, but improbability is not proof of murder. And every conspiracy theory we've explored requires extensive cooperation, coordination, multiple perpetrators, and perfect operational security. The more people involved in a conspiracy, the less likely it is to remain secret, and one of this size would be very hard to maintain. Then we're back to Occam's razor, aren't we? The simplest explanation that fits the facts is usually correct. Usually. So 7 elderly, or 8 in this case, 8 elderly or middle-aged political candidates, several with known health issues, died during a period of intense political stress. That is tragic. It is statistically unusual, but the baseline fallacy, remember, you've got a big pool of people that are involved in this, 20,000 candidates. So although it's a statistical anomaly, it's not up here, it's further down the scale. It's not necessarily criminal, unfortunately. Well, when I say unfortunately, I maybe mean fortunately, I'm not sure. So while we chase conspiracy theories, documented physical evidence is increasing across Germany. The focus should be on protecting all candidates. Sorry, I should have said documented political violence is increasing across Germany, and it is. 5,400 attacks in the last year alone. The focus should be on protecting all candidates and maintaining democratic process. So what do you guys think? Statistical anomaly? Death due to natural causes? Right enough. Yeah, and we have to remember that there are 16 families that have experienced a death in their family. And have to remember that, this is all over the internet worldwide, from Australia to Alaska. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that. It was an interesting one. An interesting one indeed. I wish I'd had more time to spend on it, but I had more car trouble this afternoon, so I was working on that as well. And I hope I've done it justice. I think you have to keep an open mind, Joey. I think you're quite right. It's not something you can quickly make your mind up about. And some of the theories on Twitter are pretty wild, to say the least. Not everything is a conspiracy. I'm sure they exist, but you need evidence. You need evidence, and there just isn't any. Not at the moment. May come to pass in a year or 2 years' time that it was a conspiracy, and it was a very well done and held one. But at this moment in time, it's not something that we can say that anyone was involved in, other than natural causes. Final destination. Espresso Mechanic blames Boris Johnson. I thought you would have gone for Putin. Everybody goes for Putin, though, don't they? He's the easy target. So with that, I'm pretty much sure it's been great for you.